Hello and thank you very much for joining us. Here are the highlights for the show today. Nigeria spends 10.7 trillion naira on fuel subsidy in 10 years. Electricity consumers get 611,231 meters on the MAP scheme as Asian stock markets are dips mostly in 11 months as U.S. Treasury yields rise. Well, on the interview segment of the show today, we will be looking at federal government's gas expansion program with a view of assessing its prospects for Nigeria's oil and gas industry. And on the flip side of the show, we will shift focus to the Nigerian economy. We'll stay with the analysis of the GDP figures, but this time around we'll focus on infrastructure issues. How can we bridge this gap to aid faster growth? That's our focus with regards to the GDP figures. But first, let's start with news across the country. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, that's NERC, says a total of 611,231 meters have been deployed as of January 31st, 2021 under the Meters Assets Providers Initiative since its full operations despite the COVID-19 pandemic and other extraneous factors. According to NERC, the existence of a huge metering gap and need to ensure successful implementation of the MITO 2020 service-based tariff resulted in the approval of the National Mass Metering Program, a policy of the federal government anchored on the provision of long-term low-interest financing to the DISCOs. The proposed review of MAP scheme is coming nearly 4 months after the federal government launched a new initiative called National Mass Metering Program, aimed at distributing 6 million meters to consumers free of charge. The Commission had in March 2018 approved the MAP regulations with the aim of fast-tracking the closure of the metering gap in the sector through the engagement of third-party investors called meter assets providers for financing, procurement, supply, installation, and maintenance of meters. When Nigeria spent a total of 10.7 trillion naira on fuel subsidy in the last 10 years. This is according to the chairman of Major Oil Marketers Association of Nigeria, Mr. Tunji Oyebanji. Mr. Oyebanji says in 2019 alone, a total sum of 750 billion naira was spent on subsidy. He highlighted the need for a transition to a market-driven environment through policy-backed legislative and commercial frameworks, enabling the sustainability of the downstream of the petroleum sector. Mr. Oyebanji notes that total deregulation is more than just the removal of price subsidies. According to him, it is aimed at improving business operations, increasing the investment in the oil and gas space, and also promoting and addressing issues around the value chain, resulting in the growth in the nation's downstream petroleum sector as a whole. He notes that Moman had recently called for a national debate to stakeholders or by stakeholders to share pragmatic and realistic initiatives to ease the impact of subsidy removal on the society, especially the most vulnerable ones. With a reserve of about 203 trillion cubic feet and an additional upside of 600 trillion cubic feet, Nigeria ranks ninth across the globe in terms of natural gas resources. Following the recent global crude oil fluctuations and premium motor spirits deregulation in Nigeria, the federal government has turned its attention towards an affordable alternative for energy. This has led to the launch of the National Gas Expansion Program, aimed at deepening domestic usage of natural gas in its various forms. Now, according to the federal government, the program is simply a plan to make life easier for Nigerians with the initiation of auto gas as an alternative to fuel. This means that cars and generators will no longer be powered by fuel. With the abundance of natural gas resources in Nigeria, the federal government is confident that this will not only soften the effects of deregulation, but also create new markets and job opportunities for Nigerians. Joining me now live via Skype to analyze the prospects of a gas expansion program to Nigerians and, of course, the oil and gas industry is a senior partner, Energy Primera African Legal, Mr. Israel Aye. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Israel Aye.
Thank you very much and good afternoon.
Yes, I'm going to start this way with the reserve, both proven and unproven, of gas in Nigeria. How well have we taken advantage of this Are we actually harnessing the potentials in this sector? We are too focused on crude oil, and crude oil, while many say Nigeria is more of a gas economy.
Well, that's a very good point you've made, Tolu. But again, look, even for the crude oil that you've talked about, historically, the orientation of the Nigerian petroleum industry has been very heavily export focused. And what is clear to us is that we will not come anywhere close to maximizing the value of, or the potential, as a matter of fact, of that particular sector, that industry, that natural resource, unless we're able to deepen domestic utilization and indigenous participation. So indeed, even if you look at the crude oil, there's not a lot of value add locally. Then gas is a totally different issue altogether. Again, historically, gas was seen more as the unwanted byproduct of crude production. And so, and for very obvious reasons, there wasn't there wasn't a concerted plan for its production. Unfortunately, gas is not the sort of thing that you can produce and store. You have to have a clear plan and strategy to go to the market before you even begin to embark upon any kind of gas development. So to your point, the case exists for us to deepen domestic utilization of gas and, I dare say, oil.
Now, taking it from there, finally we saw government coming up with the gas master plan and the gas expansion program. I was there at Edo during the launch of the gas plant somewhere in Edo State, and very commendable move there. But to you, what do you make of all of this, the auto gas rollout, the gas expansion policy, as an alternative to PMS for Nigerians at this time?
Well, generally, I like to stay very optimistic and definitely avoid being overly critical of government, particularly in public. But that said, it's a laudable objective. It's a laudable move. It's a good strategic move generally, against the background of what we said at first, that there is a need to deepen domestic utilization of gas, and especially crude, and of course crude, but especially gas. And that is because of the potential of gas to power the economy and to drive industrialization and help us to diversify, not only away from oil, but as a matter of fact to diversify, to diversify not only from oil, but indeed to kickstart industrialization and economic development. So in that direction, the gas expansion program is a very laudable objective, especially also if you look at it as a spin-off of the gas policy and the 7 big wins under the last Minister of State. And so that sort of also gives you a warm feeling that we're beginning to see a continuity in government and in governance. The fourth point, I believe it is, of the 7 big wins enunciated under the last Minister of State is the deepening of gas utilization, domestic utilization of gas. And so I like to think of the gas expansion program as, an attempt to give teeth to that. That said, I think it's absolutely important that the promoters of this objective articulate the framework a little more clearly, or the strategic approach a bit more clearly. I mean, the policy objective is clear, the desired outcome is clear, but what is not entirely clear at this point in time is the strategic approach. I mean, how exactly are we approaching this? Who's playing what role? At the moment, I'm not sure that any private sector player has absolute clarity as to what this program is about or what role they can play.
That is very important, because I think the private sector must play a role in this if we are to get to where we want to get to. Also, I'm happy on all of the positives that the minister identified, talking about improving lives of Nigerians, creating more jobs, and stimulating other sectors of the economy. Do you really agree that if we take advantage of the gas reserves that we have, we could achieve all of this?
Well, I mean, if you look at the contribution of the petroleum industry to the gross domestic product, for example, it is abysmally low. Why? Because, like we mentioned earlier on, that the orientation of the petroleum industry, which includes oil and gas and everything in between, has been very export focused. Indeed, the language of the art says to win, to work, and to carry away. As a result, even though the petroleum industry is the highest foreign exchange earner, its contribution to the economy in terms of driving growth has been rather minimal. And the reason is simple: we haven't been able to drive domestic utilization of the product, or indeed indigenous participation. So, beginning with programs like that needs to be underpinned by